All right, so here in the source code, you can see we have all the application files. All right, we are just keeping inside this internal directory. We have API, domain, DTO, helper, repository, and service. And inside the package directory, you can see we just kept all the third-party integrations in terms of notifications, emails, or maybe payment, or message broker, anything. We can just keep it inside the package because all those things are not belongs to the application, right? It's some kind of additional stuff, additional third-party package. Today we are using to send SMS using Twilio as an example, or maybe we are gonna use the you can say for sending email SendGrid, and maybe later sometimes as a kind of notification or email, maybe we can use some different parties, right? Different third parties. So in that case, our application no need to change all these things, right? What they are gonna say, they are simply going to call this send SMS, right? Or maybe send email or make payment or something like that. So that's why all these things we are keeping inside this package. So similar way, we're gonna create one for our payment as well. So let's try to create one directory. This is called payment, right? And inside the payment, let's try to create one file that is called Stripe, right? Because we are gonna implement Stripe. Stripe is very useful, and it's faster for integration, and the payment success ratio also very good, right? And we can explore some other payment interfaces as well as. But as of now, we are gonna we just wanna wrap up this whole series by implementing one of the payment gateway. So at least you can have a kind of full plus start to end experience, right? So let's try to implement Stripe first. Stripe.go, right? So this is what we are just creating that particular file. All right, so here inside this stripe.go file, we need to add a couple of codes. So, but before that, what we need to do, first of all, we need to install Stripe, all right? So let's try to install Stripe. So in this case, we can say go get Stripe, right? So now Stripe has already released the version 81, right? So you can utilize like whatever the version suits at you. But in our case, we are gonna use like V78, right? So let's try to install, right? So because I have already used in my Go library, all right, for different projects, that's why it is not saying any message right here, but it is already installed in our application. Then what we are going to do here, let's try to create one interface, all right? So the similar way, just like notifications, all right? We have one interface and we have one function that is called send SMS. So our application is not caring about what kind of SMS mechanism or what kind of clients it's been used inside this particular function, right? So this is the way we can decouple like all this third-party stuff from our application. So we are only caring about like we are gonna send a message. We will be going to send some credential. It has to send some message right there, right? And this is what we are gonna do for our payment also. What we are going to do, we'll be going to create one client right there, all right? So that client will be utilized like only we are going to make the payment, right? So let's say create payment, right? Then our payment, this particular the third-party library, we are not our application is not aware about what kind of library it has been used right there. There's totally decoupled. Only application can understand create the payment, right? Give me the link or give me the payment ID. That's all. So let's try to do that. So in this case, we are going to say type payment client, all right? And it is going to be interface. And inside this interface, we are going to create one function that is called create payment. So you can see as soon as we are adding this signature, it has imported the Stripe library right here, right? And we are accepting the amount, right? That is essential because while we are going to create the payment, if you go to this diagram, right? You might have saying like, hey Jai, please no more diagram, but still, I need to show you. So this is the thing what we are going to do. This create request session. This one we are doing right now, right? And inside this request, like while we are just creating the payment, then along with this amount and user ID and order ID, all these things we need to pass it on, right? Then only that particular this session, all right? This session can have, while this session gonna create, then this payment provider also store that session data in their database, right? So at any point of time, our backend service is going to look for that status, right? Then our backend service need to pass that particular session ID also, that session payment ID. Then only we can get like the particular session was successful or failure, because as you can see, this got disconnected here, right? So how we can do right now, one more function we need to add that is called get payment status, right? So in this get payment status, we need to provide the payment ID. That is, we are going to receive from here, this checkout session, from this checkout session. So if you hover this checkout session, you can see it has a payment object, right? So maybe payment intent it's called, right? So it is always going to vary based on like what kind of payment integrations you are doing. Based on that, if you go to checkout session, maybe you can find it out all this stuff right here somewhere, right? So but anyway, so while we're going to create the payment, then we will see like what are the logs or it is returning through the create payment. So first thing, we have created this interface. Then our application can create the payment and get the payment status, right? So now let's go here, right? And right now what we need to do, we need to create a struct as well as. This is called like payment struct, because this payment client is going to handle everything for us, right? So we are only gonna say create payment, then it has to like work with the integrations. Initially, if any kind of payment gateway or maybe some payment gateway cannot have the direct SDK, right? SDK also, it's a kind of piece of code, all right, organized code. They are also doing the S2S call, all right, server to server call behind the scene. So we're not going to differ like in India SDK, but certain things we need to provide to initiate this SDK. So first thing is going to be API key. Maybe what will be the API key, all right? So we'll be going to Stripe dashboard like once we have completed this one, all right? So API key is a kind of secret key, you can say, or maybe Stripe secret key, all right? Stripe secret key, right? So Stripe is using two types of secrets. So one is like you can say private key, all right, or maybe secret key. Another one is called publishable key. That can be like that can be used from our client, right? Maybe website, right? And the publishable key, all right? That publishable key is just like website will try to communicate with our backend service. I'm gonna say, hey, we need to initiate a session. Then particular key has to use from their end, right? So where they're going to use that particular thing, right? So as soon as backend will from backend service will receive that particular session ID from here, right? So by initiating from payment provider, then website, it will open this page, right? This page is required exactly 2 key, right? So that particular publishable key is not required for us. It's for the payment provider. It's a combination of one publishable key, that is our client, that is our this web page is going to provide to this one from our application, right? Then another one is like while we're going to create the session, then this session will be create one secret as well as that secret we're providing right here. So these are the stuff we will be explore definitely, right? So let's try to add all these things first, like what are the necessary things right here. So then second one is going to be success URL. Then third one is going to be failure URL, right? So success URL and a failure URL. So these are the two URLs going to act based on different scenarios, right? Now let's try to create one function, right? That function is going to happen like which is going to create the payment client, right? So that function call like func new payment, all right, new payment client, right? So here we're simply gonna say like this new payment client will accept the three parameters. One is called Stripe secret key, success URL, and failure URL, right? And it's a kind of form of string, right? And it is going to return the whole thing as a kind of payment client, right? This is what it is. This interface is going to return from here, and it is complaining because why it's going to complain because these two functions we have not implemented yet. So let's try to implement these two functions. Implement. Perfect. So now we have everything, right? So now let's try to add some code quickly, like for create and the get payment status as well as, right? So first of all, what we are going to do, we'll be going to add some code in the create payment, right? So let's try to get rid of all this commented code and make some room here. So let's try to initialize our Stripe, right? So in this case, stripe.key will be our this secret key. That is, we are going to provide on the time of the create this new payment client, right? Then we need to add this success and failure URL as well as, but not in right now. While we're going to create this the session, then only while we're going to create the session request, then we're going to add these two parameters. And second thing, we need to convert this amount All right. So while we're going to create this payment, then we're going to provide some kind of like, amount, just like in a dollar, euros or something. Those are the things we need to convert to cents, right? So why exactly we are sending this one as a cent? Like all the payment gateways, there's a kind of rules. You cannot directly send the amount as a kind of dollar, right? So and due to the precisions, right? So we need to keep all these things like the cent way. So let's try to create as a kind of cents. You can say amount in cents, right? So amount into 100, right? And now let's try to create our parameters, right? So params will be our Stripe's checkout session params, because as I said, we're not going to directly, first of all, we are not going to use the customized one. So we're going to use like an inbuilt UI from our payment provider. Then once that is done, then we're going to put our hands on the front end side also. Then we are going to use again the customized one, right? We are going to use the bot. But first of all, let's try to kick it off, like rather than directly go to the front end, let's try to use something, at least we can accomplish our first integration in a backend side, right? To create the order. And now inside this checkout session params, right? So let's try to create a couple of things. So first of all, the payment method type, right? Method types, right? So in this case, the payment method types, it's gonna happen like Stripe will be our string slice, and inside the string slice we can say card, right? So you can add as many as an example. You can add other stuff also, maybe whatever the payment in methods are available. Those are you can add it here, like just like a net banking or maybe Apple Pay, Google Pay, whatever. If it is available right there and it is supporting by your payment gateway, then definitely you can edit all these payment types methods right there. So as of now, let's go with the card first. So we need to check like whether it is working really or not, right? Then second gonna be line items, right? So line items is what exactly line items, right? So line items is your products, right? So if you're adding the products, right? So let's say you're buying one iPhone, right? While you are going to create the card, if you see here in the card items, right? So create the card. So this is the product ID, right? So this product ID we need to add it, like this product information, so we can add it right there. So as of now, we are not accepting any kind of product informations right here. So first of all, our main agenda is to integrate the payment gateway first. Let's see how it is going to work. Maybe later stage we are going to come up here. We'll pass all the items right there. But still we need to pass it on one of the things. That is what we can do as a kind of price data. It's going to be needed like to calculate what will be the total amount, right? So in this price data, we're going to say we're going to buy, rather than passing one iPhone, one Android, or one MacBook, we are going to say electronics, right? Let's say, right? So in this case, price data, we can say like this, and unit amount will be, this amount is in cent, right? This is what we are passing it here. And second thing, we are going to say currency. Currency, you can pass like, the Stripe is accepting certain currencies, or maybe certain payment providers are accepting certain currencies for certain countries. So this USD is going to come based on your localization. As an example, if you are working from Europe, then definitely this is going to be euro, right? And if you are working somewhere else, like maybe in US, then it's going to be USD. Or maybe if you are working from maybe some other countries, and based on that particular country, currency is gonna add right there, right? Then finally the product data, all right? So product data will be, again, it's a kind of data. So in this case, Stripe string, we are going to say electronics, let's say. So you can define like what kind of name you can add it right there. You can define it right there as well as. So in our case, we are not going to add we are not going to pass all the product informations to our payment provider. Maybe based on like regulations, we can pass the aggregated one. But again, if you think like our payment provider also we need to pass all the items to payment provider, then you can pass one by one all these things. So as you can see, this is a kind of slice, right? It's a kind of array, right? So you can edit all these things together. Now here the line item is cool, right? So here, and this is our price data. Then you can say quantity. So quantity will be 1, right? So because our electronics or whatever the item, this is aggregated amount that is already we have calculated from our service, right? So maybe let's say we're going to implement our transaction service. If you go here inside the service, this transaction service is going to handle all these things. So right now we can say like, this is electronics, right? So the total amount and is 1. All right, so now right after the line items, what we need to do, we need to pass the mood also, because you can see like this payment is this payment session we are creating for one-time payment or recurring payment. That is what you need to tell to Stripe, all right? So in this case, Stripe, you can say Stripe checkout mood payment, right? So here you can utilize like subscription as well as, right? That is what you can define here. And finally, what we need to do as soon as we are receiving the payment, because as you can see here, it is got disconnected, right? So somehow our application has to know, because we are not going to utilize right now this in webhook notifications for a while, right? That is also we can look into, but somehow we need to make it seamless. So that's why what we are going to do, we'll be going to add this success and success URL here and failure URL here. Failure, you can say cancel URL also. Let's try to make it generic. Let's say this is not the failure, it's called cancel. Or is it the failure is there? No, failure is not there. Cancel, it's called cancel. Cancel URL, all right? So let's try to rename this one. So maybe we can have generic stuff right there. And this one also. This one, cool. So now we have pretty much everything right here, right? So what we need to do right now, this params we need to utilize, right? And then again, what we have right now, this particular session belongs to whom? Belongs to this particular user, right? And this user can have one order ID also, because these are only the price data, right? Which is Stripe is going to collect, right? But this user ID and order data, that is going to be meaningful for us. Let's say we need to check the transaction for maybe to make sure like we have received the payment and payment or not for that particular user ID or user ID and order ID. That is, we can add it here. So what we can do, let's go to the params, all right? So params, you can add the metadata. It's called order ID. And again, it's a kind of key value, right? It's a form of string. Then again, you can say add user ID as well as. So this particular session belongs to this user along with this order ID. That is, we are going to pass it from our application, right? So let's try to create the session here, right? So in this case, session and error. And we will say session new, and inside new parameters we are going to provide the session. But can you see like it's giving error? It says like session is unresolved reference to session, right? So what we need to do, we need to import the session from the correct module, right? So let's go to import from session. So here, because we are using Fiber and it is also providing session, that's why it's not be able to automatically import. So make sure you are using always Stripe Go session V78, that particular SDK, whatever you have installed inside this checkout and session. So this is the correct one. So right now we need to handle the error as well. So let's try to check if we have any error. Maybe we can provide a nil and error, right? So this is extremely necessary. So instead of this one, we can say payment create session failed, right? So additionally, we can log this, log println or printf maybe, and here we can say, and this error we are going to print it out. So we will check it out from our end. So what is the cause of this error? And if there are no any errors, then we can return simply return session and nil, right? And because this is only just like logging to this error right here, that's why we have not passed it here also, right? Because we don't wanna send this that particular error to our client, right? Cool. So now our create payment is done, so we can create the payment. Now let's go ahead and add some code here in the get payment status. Get payment status is very simple. The similar way we need to just like get the whole payment stuff from our if that particular session is successful, then at least check it out and tell us the details, like whether we are able to succeed or not, right? So this is pretty much simple, you can say, right? So this is pretty much simple. Stripe key, we are again adding the Stripe key, all right? So our session, we are just like getting this session exactly this one, right? This one, and here get session get the PID. That PID we will be getting it from here, this session, right? So as soon as you are getting this session, maybe you can check it out. This session.payment. You can see we have a payment intent, and payment intent this ID. This ID we need to pass it on right here to get it, right? So as soon as we are created this session, then somehow what we are going to do, this session output we are going to store in our database also against of that particular user along with this order ID. Right? As of now, while we are going to make the payment, till that time we don't have any order, right? So somehow we need to create an order ID, right? Though we are not going to create the order, but this order ID, it has to be there, right? It has to exist, right? And that is the same way we are going to refer to this order ID also while we are going to create the order, right? So now get payment status is pretty clear, like we are assigning this Stripe ID, then we are just like getting all the session data from there. This session data will include the payment status and everything, right? And eventually, if it is succeeded, right, then it is going to return all this stuff. Otherwise, it's gonna say like get payment session is failed, right? Cool. So now we are pretty much good in this point. So we're going to close this file from here, right? Now let's go to our transaction service here. So in the transaction service, you can see why transaction service, right? It can be doable in user service as well as, right? So why we are keeping these things to the transaction, right? Because at any point of time, maybe we need to have the transaction logs from our seller perspective, right? Then definitely we need to we cannot again from the seller side, we cannot go ahead to the user service again, go find out that particular thing on behalf of the seller per user. So that's why just to simplify the responsibility, all right, for the transaction stuff, that's why we have just created this service, right? So we can edit, like we can hand it over all this collection of the payment and etc. to this service itself, right? But again, like if you don't want to do all these things in the transaction service, still it's fair, like you can go ahead with the user service as well. It's not going to hurt at all, right? All right, so right now our Stripe is done, right? This integration is done. So what we can do, we need to add all these parameters, all these things, right? These credentials in our .env file. So let's go to .env file, and here let's try to add all these things. Let's say Stripe secret will be my Stripe secret, right? So we will be going to visit Stripe dashboard in a minute. Then this is our return URL, right? Not return URL exactly. This is going to be success URL, all right? Then this is going to be cancel URL. So where we are, as you can see, we have added to different URLs, right? And because the cancel URL will not receive anything, because this cancel while any payment is going to fail or cancel, then we no need to do anything, right? So we are simply going to say, hey, your payment got canceled or payment failed, right? And success URL, we need to call our backend service. Like if you see here, once we receive the success payment stuff, like if it is hitting the success URL, then we are not passing any data from the front end. We are simply going to say, hey, backend, please validate that payment status. But still, this success URL, well, it is going to pick it up your header or maybe cookie data, right? So where we will be having our authorization stuff. So backend service can identify that this payment request, right? This success payment or payment status request, we need to call from that particular authorized user behalf, right? Then we can get directly the current active transaction and we can create the order. So that is what we are going to do from there. So now let's go here in the transaction service. We need to add a couple of stuff right here, right? But before that, let's go here once again to the configuration, where we kept the configuration file fconfig. So here in the fconfig, we need to add a couple of things. The first thing is going to be our Stripe secret. Stripe secret will be string, then success URL will be string, and the cancel URL also is going to be string. And we need to read all these things from our env, right? So this is the way, right? Success URL and cancel URL. So make sure this data, all right, this Stripe secret, success, and cancel, all these things are matching with your env file. Cool. So now, as soon as our application will load, definitely we can have all these things. But now question is like, well, where we are going to use this payment client? Somewhere we need to instantiate, right? So that is the piece of puzzle we need to solve. So let's go to our transaction service here. And maybe go to API, go to our REST handlers, right? And go to transaction handler. So what transaction handler is receiving? Transaction handler is receiving all these things like configuration and auth and DB and all, right? But we cannot use the payment client directly right here, or maybe if we are going to only gonna use the payment client in transaction handler, then tomorrow if we are going to if we need to introduce another handler, all right, so which is also needed the payment client, then how we can use this? We cannot again directly access this transaction handler. It's going to be like, you can say cycle of the dependencies, right? So so to revoke all this stuff like in a proficient manner, right, to keep it loosely coupled, what we are going to do, you can see here we have created a couple of things right here. You can see the setup auth. Setup auth is like, it's global, right? So you can pass it on anywhere. It can be setup auth, can be for any handler, let's say setup for user routes or transaction catalog and anywhere. All right, so here the similar way we did for our auth, then we're going to set up our payment client as well as, right? So here the payment client will be our payment.new payment client, right? And inside this new payment client, we need to have our Stripe key. So let's try to access our config. That is already we have added this Stripe secret, right? And second thing, what we need to do, we need to provide our Stripe secret key. Stripe secret, I think, yeah. Then we need to provide our success URL, then config success URL, and finally config.cancel URL. Right, so our payment client is perfect, but somehow we need to pass it on to our REST handler, right? So while we're going to set up our routes, then each and every route can access this particular payment client. So let's go to our REST handler here. Then we are going to say PC for payment client, all right? Then payment client. All right, so now let's go to server once again. The server here, and we are going to say PC. PC will be, payment client will be our payment client. Cool. So why it says PC? Okay, PC will be maybe capital. Let's try to put it capital like this. Cool. Now it is complying. All right, so now we have our payment client in the REST handler. So while we're going to set up our routes, all right, so while any of the handler are going to set up their own routes, then it can have direct access to this payment client. So let's go to our transaction handler, because this transaction routes is only responsible for making the payment, right? So as you can see, set up transaction routes, it has the access of this one, right? So and you can see make payment, somehow we need to pass this particular thing to our make payment. If you go to make payment, and here we need to create the payment, right? Create payment and collect it, right? And this handler directly do not have the access to the payment client, right? So what we can do, let's go to our handler here, then let's try to create the client, payment client, right? The payment client. And now what we are going to do, once we are going to set up this particular thing, right? This route, then we can directly create these the payment here. So let's try to do that. So what we can do here, this payment, yeah, from here, the transaction handler we are setting up here. So here, simply say payment client will be our as.pc, right? So now we can directly have the payment client access, right? So now you can see here, let's say h.payment client, you can create the payment, right? So all this data, amount, let's say 100, and user ID maybe 123, then order ID, whatever order ID, let's say 456, right? So now you can see we can just create the payment, and we can send that particular thing to here response, let's say payment payments, or maybe session result and error, right? And again here we will check, like if the error is not equal nil, then throw some kind of error, otherwise just like return this particular thing from here. So instead of this one, what we can do, we can say the similar way we did for our user service, REST success response, right? And here this particular thing, this result, we can just pass it on, I think. But somehow it is not complying. So let's see, like what are the things we did from there. Let's go here, and okay, so this is the way we are passing it on. So let's go here, transaction handler, just use this one. Okay. status is okay, all right, and this session result we can say result. Right, so definitely we are not going to pass this result at all. We are going to pass how? We're going to pass it like, you know, the payment URL. Let's say URL will be session result dot URL. Yeah, this is what exactly it's necessary. But this is just like, you know, I'm trying to figure out like if we are able to call this particular URL, right? So now this is the way we can hook it up or making the payment. But you can see while we're creating payment, we're passing this hard-coded data, 100 user ID, all those things. So what we are going to do here, we will be going to call user service and get the card data, aggregate the total amount and make payment and collect. All right, collect payment. All right, so this is what we are going to do, right? So you can see there are a couple of things we need to do, right? So as soon as receiving this result from there also, then what we need to do, let's try to make it like one by one. Let's say this one we are going to do. Then second, we are going to create a session, create a payment session. Then third, store session in DB, because every time user is going to make the payment, we no need to create, like, you know, we should not supposed to create a new payment. Then it is going to be a lot of abandoned payment. It will be created in our payment provider side. So that is what we don't want. So we'll be checking it out, like if, so right before here in the 2 second exactly, check if session active, other or create a new one, or create a new payment session, right? Then third, we need to store this payment in the DB to create an validate order. So this step also we need to do, right? Then finally, if everything goes well, then we need to return this URL. Then what we need to do, then we are going to make the payment and we can collect everything together. So that's all for today in this episode. In the next episode, we're going to handle all these things completely, all right, by covering the codes. And finally, we will be going to do one round of test, all right? And once our checkout session is done, then definitely, as I explained in this diagram, first of all, we are going to apply this checkout way, right? And then the second step, what we are going to do, we're going to change this one to a custom UI, because we're going to put our hands on and finally in our front end right before deployment. Then we are going to change this one to custom UI, so we can have a flexibility where we can create our fields our own, right? Cool. Then thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you in another episode.